Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, SavageTechman. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast. I'm your host, SavageTechman, and today some of the stuff we're going to be talking about may be considered spoilers, so I'm just going to call a spoiler alert just in case, so proceed at your own caution, okay? Before we jump into things, I do want to say a thank you to all of our listeners through Twitter at Geek Homeworld. We've been talking back and forth. Thank y'all so much for that interactivity, for the community speaking back to us and giving us the positive feedback we've been getting. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it here at the podcast. We're going strong with this podcast, and I like talking about geeky things. It's part of what I like to do in life, and I know that you do because you listen. So we're always interested in what you have to say, so contact us at our Twitter handle at Geek Homeworld. Go over to our Facebook page, click that like button, subscribe. When we update it, you'll get updates. Go over to Blogger and check out our blogs over there. We have bonus content over there sometimes, so we've had some stuff recently on there I think you'll enjoy, so check that out. We appreciate that too. And we've got a lot coming, so I need to stop my yapping and let's get on to talking about some geeky things. There's a lot of little tidbits of things coming soon, basically, and we've got some updates that we wanted to share with you. I wanted to speak a little bit about. So, first one is Star Trek Discovery. Now, this is a CBS All Access, which means you're going to have to pay for it at this point. It's a series, Star Trek Discovery. Now, it was supposed to already have been out or towards the end of 2017. It looks possibly like the production is moving definitely forward, but it looks like we may not see our first episode until 2018 at this time. So I don't think they're trying to rush it. I think they're trying to get it right, but we'll have to see. They're getting a lot of the crew together, I guess, as you would say, in casting, so that's an exciting thing to see it moving forward. If you are in North America, you're basically going to have to pay to see it. Now, I think everywhere else in the world it's going to be on Netflix. So I think CBS just needs to drop the whole pay to watch it kind of thing and just put it on Netflix or put it on CBS. However you're going to do it, I'm not sure. But we'll see how that pans out. I think a lot of fans will be turned off. I know I already am turned off. I'm excited that I want to see it. I need some Star Trek. We haven't had Star Trek on TV since 2005 when Enterprise finished up. And Enterprise was not the most popular of the TV series on TV. Right now there's no movies planned after the third Star Trek and that trilogy came out, so we're not sure. We're kind of in between movies right now, and there's really not much on the planning board. I'm sure there is, but all we've got is Star Trek Discovery, so we're hoping to see that soon. It sounds like 2018, maybe sooner, maybe later. I'd rather them wait and get it right, and the delivery method not have to be something I have to pay for to watch. Already pay enough for cable. Looking at it, they have done some interesting things. They've shown a little trailer before, and the logo is kind of like gold and kind of metallic looking. And so this is supposed to take place, Star Trek Discovery, on a brand new starship that we've not seen before with a crew we have not seen before. And I'm sure it's going to be a multi-species crew, which will be awesome. And that's what's great about Star Trek is the diversity, something from the vision of Gene Roddenberry that still carries through to this day. And that's a great thing. So it's about a decade where this is set, a decade before the original Star Trek series. That worries me again because this almost sounds like they're redoing Star Trek Enterprise, but I think they're trying to go back and do it right. Now, Star Trek has never really worked when you go back in the past. Look at Enterprise, okay? Now, it wasn't a terrible show. I watched it. I didn't watch all of it, but I did watch a good portion of it. And it's still Star Trek. In the end, even bad Star Trek is better than no Star Trek. So I still need some Star Trek in my life. So there'll be much more to discuss about this. But basically, Star Trek Discovery, the ship, it looks to me interesting enough like an earlier Star Trek vessel combined with a Klingon bird of prey, which is a strange look, but it may work. Aerodynamics don't really matter in space, I know that, but one of my favorite ships was Voyager, of course, the Next Generation ships. When you get up all the way to the Enterprise E, I mean, they're awesome, so I love all the different ships. They just get so intricate with things, and this looks like a kind of scaled down earlier version. I'm not sure, but we'll find out. But it's going to be an interesting show, and it's got Brian Fuller. He's created it along with Alex Kurtzman. So that's Star Trek Discovery. We will see when that comes out, hopefully very soon. And switching gears here now, we see Josh Brolin, who everyone knows in the Marvel Universe as Thanos, that we're going to see in Infinity Wars 1 and 2, which Infinity Wars is going to be so epic. It's what we've been building up to since 2008 when the first Iron Man came out and just blew people away. And we've been leading up to the big fight in the two movies with Thanos. So basically Thanos, I guess, coming to Earth. So we're going to have the Guardians of the Galaxy. We're going to have everybody in there. There's going to be 40, 50 different people in this movie. It's going to be just ridiculous. And it's just going to be crazy. Great. But we had some casting news, and this doesn't make sense, but Josh Brolin is also going to play Cable. And so in Deadpool 2, we're going to see Cable. There was a list going around with Brad Pitt. We had Michael Shannon from DC, Zod. And Russell Crowe even, also from like Man of Steel. And then we had David Harbour, Kyle Chandler, all these names thrown around. But they're going with Josh Brolin as Cable. So he is going to be Thanos and Cable, which is amazing. I don't understand it. No one understands it at this point. But they've already shown him in the makeup for it. So that's just going to be interesting. And there's a deal for 4 films. And that's going to include, definitely, the first one will be Deadpool 2. We'll see Cable in that. Possibly Deadpool 3. Maybe a Cable standalone movie, which, if they do Cable right, I'm going to be excited. If they screw Cable up, he's one of my favorite characters. I do not want them to mess up the character of Cable. He's got to be badass. He's got to have his future tech on him. He's got to time travel. And why didn't they bring him into X-Men Apocalypse? I don't know. It could have made it so much better. So we've got Deadpool 2, possibly Deadpool 3, a standalone Cable movie, hopefully, and an X-Force movie. But there could be an X-Force trilogy, so I don't know how it works out. There may not be a standalone Cable movie. I don't know. Cable's a hard kind of timeline to go through because you've got to pull in Scott and Jean. You've got to pull in Mr. Sinister, Apocalypse. It's exciting. You've got to pull Bishop into it if you're going to do it right. So anyway, it was just so funny because Ryan Reynolds got on Twitter and he said, quote, the F-bomb, I'll say, Fox, quote, you can't, this is so funny, I'm just cracking up here. You can't play 2 characters in the same universe. Josh Brolin was in Cicero and I was in Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I tell you, Ryan Reynolds has just taken the role of Deadpool and he's just really remade it to himself. But he has a very good point there. And Josh Brolin, he's been in Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. He was in Men in Black 3, and he was also in Jonah Hex in the way of kind of like comic book characters. So how he plays Thanos and Cable is beyond me. I don't know. So very excited for that. Now, the next thing we have to chat about is the X-Files is returning to Fox later 2017. Another installment of episodes. They did, what, was it 4 or 5 or 6? I can't remember, but I love the return late last year, this year, whatever, of X-Files. David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson are reprising their roles, and some of the other people, main characters from the X-Files on, I think, Audible. They're going to do an audiobook series. But the big news for me is Fox is given a 10-episode commitment with Chris Carter on it. So we're going to see David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson reprise their roles. I am excited. I'm ecstatic. So all you X-Files fans out there, super excited about this. In 2016, it brought in close to just under 20 million in viewership, and a very big kind of demographic there, the X-Files, when it came back to television. Now, in 93, I think, was the 9th and final season. So it ended basically in the 90s, came back in 2016 for a few episodes, which were awesome. And they were a good mixture. One was like totally comic, and one was very serious. And oh my gosh, the ending of that one, if you hadn't seen it, you need to go back and watch it. But super excited about that. The X-Files series, if you've not watched it, where have you been? Are you new to this earth? Looking very much forward to X-Files returning. So that is kind of the summary of some of the things we got going on. So here's to Discovery, to cable, to X-Files, and hopefully somewhere out there the truth is out there. And guess what? I want to believe.
Geek Homeworld Review Preview.
After a long hiatus, Cheryl returns to the podcast.
Welcome.
Hello.
Oh, wait, that's your line.
Yeah, it's my line. Hello.
Strike that. Reverse it.
Where you been hiding?
Far, far away.
Far, far away.
Yes, but I am back because Doctor Who is back.
Doctor Who has returned.
So we are now watching what will, I think, be the final season of the 12th Doctor and the 10th season of the reboot with a new companion. Actually, I guess technically a couple of new companions, although we did see Nardal in the Christmas episode, and we'd seen Nardal before as the companion of River Song, but he's now back, I guess, as a more full-time companion for the Doctor, and he also picks up in the first episode of this new season a new human companion. Nardal is an alien or a cyborg, at least of some sort, right. Maybe even cybernetic at this point, because his body is making weird noises in the first episode, and as you know, he was decapitated in the Christmas episode, so
I hate when that happens. We
may learn more about what has happened to Nardal, but in the meantime, we have our new human companion, Bill, who is a female, so a female named Bill, who Doctor Who has met at the university where he is apparently teaching, but not teaching anything in particular, just whatever he feels like teaching, and Bill is there. Oh, by the way, spoilers, as River Song would say.
Spoiler, yes.
And so Bill is fascinated by the Doctor and loves to listen to his lectures, even though actually she was not even a university student. She was working, I guess, in food services on the chip station, or for we Americans.
She just popped in there.
She served French fries.
Yes.
So that was her job, and now she is traveling with the Doctor. Once traveling accidentally on that first episode, which is the pilot, and then of course he offers to take her wherever she wants to go, which she only chooses the future in episode 2, which is
exactly when we watched it what I'd said, past or future. I was like, future.
But we're not quite sure where they end up at the end of the episode, so maybe they did go past, but maybe they went future. Not clear yet exactly where they ended up at the end of the episode. They're supposed to be rejoining Nardal for tea, but they seem to have messed up somewhere in the timeline, so we'll see what happens in episode 3. I think what's interesting about this new season is that the creators have promised us that this is a kind of reboot of the reboot.
Yeah, that's what I was about to get to, yeah.
And that it's supposed to provide us with the basics of Doctor Who. So if you...
Who is Doctor Who?
Well, or as Bill actually says, most of the people who encounter him will say, "So you're the Doctor, Doctor Who?" And he's like, "Exactly." But in this case, Bill says, "Doctor what?" So she doesn't get that line quite right. But they're supposed to be giving us like a little bit of backstory, an introduction to the TARDIS, you know, so he gives us what what TARDIS stands for. But
I'm not going to quiz you on that right now.
well, I just wasn't convinced in that first episode, which, again, in line with the idea of a reboot, as I already mentioned, the name of the episode is The Pilot, which could have a double meaning because
True.
the preview episode of any new television series, which is shown to, you know, the broadcasters to decide whether or not to pick up and fund a program, is called the pilot episode.
Yeah.
So it was interesting that the name of it was The Pilot, although that's not what it was about. But I didn't think that episode actually did provide a primer for what Doctor Who is, or who Doctor Who is. You know, you see pictures on his desk of
There's something
River and of Susan, but you don't have any idea who they are if you don't know who they
if you are a total new Whovian.
Yeah, and even, you know, she does ultimately, Bill gets to the phrase, "It's bigger on the inside," which Nardole comments, "Oh, we got there." But, and of course everyone says that when they go into the TARDIS.
Right.
But it still didn't make it clear. And actually, I didn't particularly enjoy that episode.
Well, I thought it was, so far, it's kind of dumbed down, at least episode 1. And I get that for some people that might think, I mean, the Doctor Who was just, you know, some weird sci-fi kind of thing, but it's a quite brilliant show. But episode 2, or I guess they called it episode 2, I'm not sure, but it was much more engaging for me.
Well, I thought it was generally brighter. I mean, and not just in terms of course, the actual artistic creation of it, the scene and the scenic design and the camera work and all that is actually brighter in the second episode, Smile, than it is in the pilot. But I felt like the darkness of the storyline for the pilot, it was just a little too creepy for me for it to be an introduction to Doctor Who, I guess. But I prefer that lightness, that humor that Doctor Who has, which is also the reason why I'm not interested in watching the new spin-off, which Class, which also launched on the same night here in the United States, at least. I don't know about other places, but it launched immediately following the season premiere of Doctor Who here. But it's supposed to be much darker. It's more on towards the horror end of the spectrum than the funny sci-fi.
Right. I prefer the funny sci-fi.
I do, you know, and it's hard with this Doctor, and I know a lot of people aren't fans of the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi, and he doesn't have the same kind of humor as Matt Smith or David Tennant did. And so I don't know, just a little bit too thinky in that first episode, if that's the word I'm going to use. It's too much. If I was trying to view it through the eyes of, if this were the first time I were watching it, what would I think about this program? And I think that I would not watch it again.
The pilot didn't sell me too much on the idea of this show. I'm like, okay, the second episode would have made a better pilot for me, you know, kind of combine the two episodes somewhat, or some of the information from the first episode with the second.
Right. With the episode Smile, we do get a good introduction to a lot of things that are Doctor Who. What we don't get in that is the introduction to Bill so much, although we certainly learn a lot about Bill's personality and her sense of adventure and fun. But
we don't get a smiley face.
We don't get anything of her backstory. So we get, in the pilot, we do get some backstory, which is full of mystery, of course, for Bill in the pilot episode. which of course we do need to know something about Bill, and we needed to know how Bill met. And so, yeah, so we had that humor there in how Bill and the doctor met. But there's something going on with the time frame that's not clear. And at some point we do know from that first episode that we're going to learn more about the real meeting of Bill and Doctor Who. So they're something over almost River Song-ish about it, or almost like some of his previous companions, where there's sort of this fate to bringing them together, because when Bill gets the box of photographs of her mother, she does see Doctor Who in the background of one of those photos, and so we know he's been part of her life before, and at some point we're going to learn what that is, presumably, because that's what we usually have happen with Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. So that will be interesting to find out. But the rest of that episode, I don't know. And it's clear Doctor Who has once again, as he's done many times before when he's lost companions, has said to himself, okay, I'm not going to do this companion thing anymore, because I care about them and then I lose them, or I care about them and they die. And so he doesn't want to put himself through that again. And you can see he has a real moment in the pilot where he actually decides, okay, Bill and I are going to do this. But then when in the second episode, when he and Bill are in the TARDIS and he's trying to figure out where they're going to go next, he's clearly excited about having a companion, right, and about doing the escapades. And it is Nardal who comes in and says, excuse me, you are not allowed to leave the planet.
Yeah.
And
that was funny.
So there are more things going to be going on between Nardal and Doctor Who that we will be discovering as well in this last season. And then we'll see what happens into a transition for the 13th Doctor.
With the sort of reboot, does it negate everything that's happened before on Doctor Who?
No, it's not that kind of reboot. So it's not even like Doctor Who regenerated. I think that's just a term that the show makers are using to say, hey, come check this out, I guess in a way to attract new viewers, although it certainly doesn't do anything to attract or retain existing viewers, because we don't need that. So I think for some reason they're doing that to try to attract a new generation or new segments of the population to watch the show.
The uninitiated to Doctor Who.
Right. And so we see with, for instance, with Bill, here we have another African-American. Well, I guess technically she's not African-American because she's British, but here we have someone, a black companion, which we've seen that before. Here we have a lesbian companion, and we did have before with Captain Jack Harkness a character that was bisexual, but we haven't had a direct companion who wasn't heterosexual. And so we presume then that there isn't the possibility that we have a companion who falls in love with the Doctor. Bill's not with him for that in the way some of his previous companions have been. She's here because she really wants the adventure, and she's excited by all of it. And so that makes her a very fresh character. I found her wardrobe in The Smile a lot of fun, and Smile was kind of interesting because it builds on the whole idea of emoticons or emojis.
That's what survived our language.
What survives our language is this sort of emoticon language. So I find Bill refreshing. I like her. We have found, or at least you specifically, I think, found her accent a little bit difficult.
Yeah. Also, the fact that we're watching BBC and it's not locally here where we get it, it's not like a high definition kind of signal. I don't feel it's on the channel that we get BBC on here.
Well, there was one line where there was one point at which you actually wanted to turn on the closed captioning so you could see what she was saying.
It's a little bit of the accent,
but she said something like, "You make a good tutor," but in her accent it was like tutor. And you were like, what did she say? First of all, tutor is not a word that we would necessarily use in our daily lives, right, because one, we're not students, and two, we just wouldn't say it. We would say teacher probably in that context. And tutor, she's leaving out a whole word, whole letter in her pronunciation that's pretty critical to understanding what the word is. But
exactly,
I think the portrayal of her is very well done. I still am not a giant fan of Capaldi, although did enjoy him more in the Smile than in
when
the
he
pilot.
first Peter Capaldi came to it. I was like, who is this older gray-haired guy? I don't really like him as the Doctor at all. And then I watched some of the episodes of them, and now I like him.
Well,
I liked him before the reboot.
I don't dislike
soft
him.
boot or whatever they're calling this.
Soft boot.
I don't know.
It's not reboot in the sense that we would usually say reboot.
Right. In this current season, I mean, I like him. I liked him before this current season, but at first I was a little apprehensive. I was like, okay. Maybe I liked was David Tennant the first one we watched together?
Yeah, so David Tennant, who started out in season 2 of the reboot, and then Matt Smith, and of course now Peter Capaldi. But there are other things that we see in this season that are trying to tie the 12th Doctor back to Doctor Who's past. He does admit to Bill that he stole the TARDIS, and so that's as far as he's gotten in his origin story to her. Right. But, and I mentioned that he has on his desk a picture of River Song and a picture of Susan. But he also, which I thought was really fun, I got super excited about it. Mm-hmm. He's got a whole collection of all of the sonic screwdrivers, and I think Bill actually picks one up at one point. And, of course, one of the things that was a little bit controversial with this Doctor was that initially at one point, he did not use the sonic screwdriver, and then they brought it back. So it's good to see it tying back to its own history, because I think there was some concern that it was getting away from its history sometimes.
He just needs a scarf.
The scarf, like back in the... and Tennant wore a scarf sometimes, and it's so funny. I saw something where they were showing...
It's a little drafty when you're traveling through time.
They showed a photograph of what Bill Nye, the science guy, was packing to take to a conference or something on Twitter, and there was all this stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, Bill Nye is Doctor Who. Hashtag
you heard it here
bow
first.
ties are cool.
I would go for Bill Nye being our next Doctor.
Yeah. Well, and we did also see in the pilot Doctor Who's old nemesis, the Daleks, were there, and so Bill got to meet the Daleks. So I think it's more about reconnecting Doctor Who with his own or its own as a show history than it is about a real reboot. And so I think in that way it's refreshing it for the longtime fans, which are certainly people who are longer term fans than I have. I've not seen any of the original Doctor Who at all, but I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. I'm hoping more of the Smile type episodes than the pilot type episodes, but we'll see what happens. See what happens with Noradal. I really don't like the idea that River Song is never coming back, and I don't understand when you travel in time why you can't see people, but we'll see what happens.
Oh gosh, space-time continuum.
I love River Song, so that would be the spinoff I would watch.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Alrighty, well, thank you for coming back and joining us for this Doctor Whovian moment.
Well, I plan to be back before too long because I've been rewatching all of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, so
Yes,
I'll come back and talk about that. Probably going to talk about the side characters that I enjoy the most. So
interesting. There's a preview, and I know you've been deep in your bunker underground in an undisclosed location, catching up on your Star Trek.
It feels like that sometimes.
Yes.
Geek Homeworld Review Preview.
We're talking now about the Fate of the Furious, better known as F8. Not to be confused with the Zoom F8 recorder, for all you sound mixers out there. Some industry humor there for you. So, should you see this movie? Yes. Why should you see F8? You should see F8 because it is a typical summer blockbuster. It has got all the car action. It's got humor in it. It's got some very serious acting in it. It kind of hits on all cylinders, no pun intended. It really kept my attention in the theaters. Finally saw it the other day and so happy with it. Vin Diesel, Jason Statham, The Rock, definitely Michelle Rodriguez, the crew, Ludacris, Tyrese Gibson, and the character of Cypher steals this movie, and that is played by Charlize Theron. There was like a line, and she crossed that line in the movie, and I'm calling spoiler alert, just in case you hadn't seen it yet, you should run out and see it. But we find out the big reveal is that Dom has a baby boy, and Cypher is basically holding him captive, and that's why Dom turns on his crew. There are a lot of twists and turns in this movie. Basically, Dom steals an EMP, and then he steals nuclear codes and a submarine. It's like crazy. It's anything you can think of. And are the stunts believable? Of course not. Is it way over the top? Exactly. And is that what we wanted? Yes. There are cars that are remote controlled by Cypher that are coming out of a parking garage. There are hundreds of them that are just like all turned on automatically, and they've got auto drive. It's kind of like Terminator 3 if you think about it in a way. And when all this is happening, she's controlling stuff, and Dom's just really kind of under her control because his whole family's going to suffer and die, especially his son, whose life she threatens. And so he has no choice but to go with this, but Dom's always got a plan, so his plan works out, and everything turns out well for the crew. They did mention Brian and said they weren't going to, quote, bother him. With Paul Walker being gone, they ended up naming the first name of the kid towards the end. It's all about family because that's what the Fast and Furious, the theme of the series is. So he named his baby boy Brian in honor of Brian, Paul Walker's character. So I thought that was really cool. The action in this movie is just total next level, and you should definitely see it. There was a lot to take in, a lot to watch on this, and I think you really, if you're looking for a fun escapism summer movie, then this is probably one of those movies you definitely want to see. So, final verdict. Should you go see The Fate of the Furious or F8? If you want a good, fun action movie, then the answer is yes. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast with your host, SavageTechman. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on iTunes, see us on YouTube, be part of our Mixler chats. Thank you. See you again on the Geek Homeworld podcast.
Geek Homeworld.